Hey true crime besties, it's me, Annie Elise, and this is 10 to Life. I hope you guys are all doing well today. You are having some moment of zen because I'm sure I'm about to disrupt that with today's case because it is extra terrifying and horrific, and it just kind of is a clear illustration, again, as if we needed one more illustration, but it's just another illustration of how sometimes people can be not too trusting, but trust the wrong people. And it's especially heinous, if I'm going to be quite honest. So I hope you're doing well before I hop in and ruin your day with this case. But as always, it's important, I feel like, to share these cases and spread awareness. And if they went through this, the least we could do is hear what they went through and hopefully educate others. So anyways, if you're brand new to the channel, welcome. Sorry for the long intro. My name's Annie, and I break down true crime cases for you. We do deep dives, we do topside reviews, we do updates, we do a little bit of it all. So welcome. I hope you appreciate today's case coverage, and if you feel like this channel is something that you're into and you want to see more of the content, make sure you take a quick second, hit the subscribe button, and that way you won't miss anything. It's free to do. It's not a subscribe button like all the new subscriptions going on Instagram and all these things. It's free. It's kind of just like a follow button. So anyways, I hope you guys are all doing well. I apologize in advance if I'm like talking weird again in this video. My jaw, I don't know if you caught me in the last video, my jaw is still super mega screwed up. Been to 2 different oral surgeons. I've had an x-ray. I'm getting an MRI in a couple days. Basically, it looks like I might have to have joint surgery to replace the joint. How that is happening at 36 years old, I don't know, but anyways, it's very painful sometimes when I talk too much or talk too long, and so my mouth kind of and my jaw kind of just starts like doing this weird thing as I'm talking. So if you notice that starts happening during this video, sorry. Hopefully it'll be fixed in the near future. We'll see. I've gotten a steroid shot. It's kind of helped, but sorry. This is a long-winded intro today, guys. I am very sorry. So we're going to jump right in. This case takes place in March of 2019. And again, it is unfortunately a reminder of trusting the wrong type of person and unknowingly trusting the wrong kind of person. So let's get right into it, guys. My name's Annie, and we are going to jump right in. 21-year-old Samantha "Sammy" Josephson was born on August 13th, 1997 in Princeton, New Jersey. Sammy was born just 20 months after her older sister Sydney, and they grew up in Robbinsville, New Jersey with her parents Seymour and Marcy Josephson. Robbinsville is a very quiet and tight-knit community, and Samantha absolutely loved her community, and she was so grateful that she had the opportunity to grow up there. Growing up, Samantha was a very bubbly, social, and cheerful kid, and although she was often described as a little bit clumsy, she grew up playing soccer and also basketball just so that she could socialize and make new friends. You know the saying, sometimes they say, join sports to make friends. Those are the closest friends you'll ever have, and that's what Sammy did. Now, I don't know about you, but if you have ever played sports growing up, there usually is always 1 or 2 kids on the team who were like social butterflies, who were there just to have fun. And that was also Sammy. She was always the type of person that made everybody around her happier. She had this infectious laugh, and she was just kind of a joy, as cliche as that sounds. She was a joy to be around. And her laugh was so infectious that when she did laugh, most people around her couldn't help but laugh as well, laugh at her laugh. She was truly just a joyous person, and her goofy yet lovable personality created many memorable moments that her friends and family refer to as Sammyisms. She never held back about who she was, what she was thinking, what she was feeling, and her father Seymour had said that she was the most honest person he has ever come across. Sammy was truly just an all-American girl. She had this beautiful, long brown hair, big brown eyes, many friends, and she was also insanely smart. She attended Robbinsville High School, and early on in high school, she got a head start on touring colleges with her families. And while touring colleges, she fell completely in love with the University of South Carolina in Columbia, and it quickly became her absolute dream school. USC ended up being the only school that Sammy applied to, and it was no surprise that she was accepted. So she began her college journey in August of 2015. She was a political science major, and she was thrilled for all of the fun, the life lessons, and the forever memories that would be headed her way. While in college, she met the love of her life, a man named Greg Corbishley. The two of them hit it off, and they began dating in the spring of 2017. Greg felt like he had never met somebody who, in his words, was just so unapologetically true to themselves, just like Sammy was, and he felt truly lucky to know her and to love her. The two of them talked constantly and did almost everything together. Sammy was a member of the Alpha Delta Gamma sorority, and she did a really great job balancing her relationship, her social life, her job working as a waitress at a local restaurant, and all of her college classes on top of it. One of her professors, Daniela James, said that she didn't ever shy away from a challenge. Not ever. In fact, she was continually trying to be better than the day before, and if she made a mistake, she laughed it off and just tried harder the next time, all while never giving up. Sammy was set to graduate in May of 2019, and after graduation, she was planning to take a trip to Israel, just like her sister did the previous winter, and she was so excited to go. She loved to travel and had already had the opportunity to study abroad while at USC, which only expanded her love for travel. While studying abroad, she had the opportunity to spend time in Barcelona, Paris, and Madrid, and those experiences inspired her to work toward an international law degree after graduating from USC. She had received a full scholarship to the Drexel University School of Law, and she planned to attend the following fall. Greg planned on finding a job near her so he could support her throughout her law school journey and so that they would be close. She wanted to become a lawyer, she wanted to travel often, and she and Greg also knew that they wanted to get married and move back to her hometown of Robbinsville, New Jersey. Like I said, Sammy loved that tight-knit community of Robbinsville, and it really was important to her, and she wanted to just spend her life there with Greg, just be happy. But before all of those future plans, she was going to finish out her college years strong. On Thursday, March 28, 2019, just 2 months away from her graduation, Sammy had decided to go out with some of her friends and her roommates. They were seniors after all, and it was close to the end of the semester. And if you've been in college, you probably remember that time of the year and those long late night studying, sometimes you just want to break away, have fun. They feel never ending. You're up late, you're tired, you're burnt out, and you basically have zero time for friends or really anything fun at all. Considering that she received amazing grades and had been filling out law school applications like crazy, she was definitely feeling a little bit of stress. And on top of the stress from school, a family member of hers had been dealing with some medical issues. So she really just felt like she needed to go out with her friends, let loose, have some fun, which I think we all can relate to that feeling at some point in life. So Sammy had been talking to Greg all throughout the day on Thursday and had begged him to go out with her and her friends. But Greg had graduated that past December and was back living in Charleston, South Carolina with his family. He often made the 2-hour drive to Columbia to visit her, but the plan was that she was going to come visit him in Charleston just 2 days later. So he said that they could wait to see each other. There wasn't any hurry. She was going to be there in 2 days, so he wasn't going to make that huge drive. Go out with your friends. Have fun. I'll see you in a couple days. So Greg stayed in Charleston that night and just told her, forget about me. Go hang out with your friends, enjoy yourself, and have fun. She had been working so hard. She got into law school and she received a full scholarship. So if anybody deserved to celebrate, it was definitely Sammy. So Sammy and her friends decided to go to an area of Columbia called 5 Points. 5 Points is a very popular spot for many USC students because it's so close to the campus and it also has shopping, restaurants, and bars all around. So Sammy and her friends often went to the 5 Points area, and it was actually where Sammy and Greg originally met. That night, Sammy got ready, and she wore a pair of black pants, platform sandals, and a bright orange top. She and her friends first stopped at their friend Edgar's house before walking over to 5 Points. Edgar lived really close to 5 Points, so they often met there before going out for the night, something that usually happens. If you have a friend who lives close to the bars, you usually start there, you either pregame there, you walk over together. It's easy to then not have to get a car, not get an Uber. It's just very, very common. So they go over there, they meet, and then they head out for the night. They arrived in the 5 Points area around 12:30 a.m. on Friday, March 29th, 2019. At 12:40 a.m., Sammy and her friends arrived at a bar that they often frequented called Bird Dog. And at Bird Dog, it was a super average night. They were drinking, talking, listening to music, and just overall having a fun, normal night. Sammy continued to communicate with her boyfriend Greg while she was at Bird Dog. Their conversations weren't anything out of the norm. It was really just Sammy continuing to try to get him to come, convince Greg to drive to Columbia. They also talked about how their nights were going and just had a really normal conversation. And as you can see, normal is kind of the common theme here. Nothing seemed off or out of the ordinary that night. Not at all. So at 2:04 a.m., Sammy called Greg, and they had a very quick conversation. She told him that she was getting in an Uber and she was going to head back home, which it wasn't uncommon for her, as well as tons of other students to use Uber to get home after a night out. It's the safe way to go. It's better than drinking and driving, and the apartment complex that she and her friends lived in, called The Hub, was way too far to walk to at night, so they often relied on Uber for transportation. While at the bar, Sammy had gotten separated from her friends at one point, and since she had work the next day, she decided that it was just time to call it a night and to head home. In her friend group, it was really normal for people to kind of just leave randomly and at different times of the night, so her friends didn't notice her leaving, and she also didn't find them to say goodbye. She was just ready to take off, maybe like an Irish goodbye, if you will. So at 2:09 a.m., Sammy got into a black Chevy Impala, ready to head home and then get to work the next morning. Like many couples, Sammy and Greg shared their locations with each other through the app Find My Friends. So after Sammy called Greg, he started tracking her location to ensure that she arrived home safely. But he immediately noticed that something was off. The hub where Sammy lived was located north of the 5 Points area. However, Sammy's location showed that she was traveling south, the complete opposite direction that she should have been going. So Greg called and was sending text messages to Sammy, but Sammy didn't answer. He tried not to think of the worst case scenario and thought that maybe she decided to go back to Edgar's house or even to another friend's house. And he tried contacting her in every way that he could think of. Calls, texts, Snapchats, just anything to get in contact with Sammy to make sure that things were in fact okay before overreacting. But time went on and he still received no response. Now, Sammy typically had her read receipts on, and the messages that Greg sent were not even showing as being read. They were just showing as being delivered. And then at 2:30 a.m., something happened that had never happened before during the entire time of Sammy and Greg's relationship. Sammy abruptly stopped sharing her location with Greg. Sammy's location stopped sharing when she was on Montgomery Avenue, which was 3 miles south of the 5 Point area. Greg texted and called Sammy's friends and her roommates, and really, they hadn't even realized that she was gone until Greg had called them. Sammy was also sharing her location with her friends, and when they all checked her location, they also all saw that her location stopped around Montgomery Avenue. So they decided to drive toward that area to try and find her, but they couldn't find her, and they also didn't see anything suspicious. There was an older abandoned house on the street and a sorority house right next to it. There were a few cars, but nothing else. No Sammy. So they all came to the conclusion that she probably just left her phone in an Uber, the phone died, and that she was at home safe and sleeping. So Greg fell asleep shortly after this, thinking that Sammy was at home and just left her phone in that Uber. It died. That's why the location stopped. Her roommates then went home, and when they all got home, one roommate noticed that Sammy's bedroom door was open, and that she actually was not home. But it was late now, almost 5 in the morning. They had all been drinking heavily, And they also probably weren't in the right state of mind. I mean, they were all in college after all. We've all been there. So they all went to their rooms, not thinking anything of it, and went to sleep. Sammy's roommates woke up a few hours later around 10:30 a.m. Friday morning, and they noticed that her door was still open and that her work shoes were out. Now, this was kind of weird because they knew that she had a waitressing shift that morning at the restaurant that she worked at called the Liberty Tap Room. So her roommates called the restaurant, and they said that they hadn't seen Sammy, but they all knew that she would never miss work without calling first. So this was a major red flag that something was not right. The roommates decided to go out and continue looking for her. They looked at all of the places that they were the previous night, and they went back to Montgomery Avenue to look for any sign of her. Meanwhile, Greg had woken up and still hadn't heard anything from Sammy either, which was really unnerving. When he talked to her friends on the phone and learned that she wasn't at work and that nobody had heard from her, he immediately started driving toward Columbia. Like I said earlier, though, it takes about 2 hours to drive from Charleston to Columbia, and during that drive, he decided to call Sammy's parents, who immediately got in their car and started the very long drive from New Jersey to South Carolina. Sammy's parents also had started to grow suspicious because they were used to hearing from her by that point in the day, and they hadn't. Her mother, Marcy, always sent her daughter a good morning text, but Sammy never replied to the text that morning, which, while it wasn't immediately alarming because Marcy knew that Sammy had work, she started to get more worried when she never received a response as the day went on. And then she received that phone call from Greg. So after driving around and searching for Sammy, her roommates went back to their apartment at the Hub, and then they called the police, and this was at 1:30 p.m. Now, you may be wondering why they didn't call the police right away. But like many people, they thought that there was a rule that you had to wait 24 hours to report a missing person, which unfortunately is a misconception that is more common than you actually would think.
Friday, March 29, 2019, 12:30 and 19 seconds.
Yeah, it's really hard.
911, what's your emergency?
Hi, we were just gonna call to let you know our friend is missing.
So you want to make a missing person report?
Yeah, it hasn't been like 24 hours or anything, but if we could go ahead and do that, like, that'd be really nice.
Yeah, it don't have to be 24 hours if you report anybody missing.
Oh, I don't know why I thought that.
Oh, no.
Okay, yeah.
What's the address? Where are you located?
1426 Main Street.
Is he missing from his address?
We went out in 5 Points last night, and she still hasn't made it home. Her phone's dead. We don't think she, like, went home with, like, a guy or anything. Like, we're, like, actually, like, worried. So she missed work this morning.
All right. What is your apartment number?
901.
All right. And what is her name?
Samantha Josephson. She goes by Sammy.
Samantha, what's her last name?
Josephson. Josephson.
And how old is she?
21.
She white, black, Hispanic?
She's white with really dark hair. She's Jewish.
Do you know her date of birth?
August, someday in August. August 13th.
And what's the year?
I guess 1997 would make her, 1997.
Okay, now, but how tall do you think she is?
Probably like 5'6", maybe close to 5'7".
How much she weigh?
Probably like 145, 150.
And you remember what she was wearing?
She was wearing a bright orange shirt with black pants.
So we got a bright orange shirt and black pants.
Yes.
And how was her hair?
It was straight. It was down at the time. It's about shoulder length, maybe a little longer.
So her hair, like, is it to her neck, shoulder length?
Wait, like the length?
Yeah, you think it's at her shoulder or the past her shoulder?
A little past her shoulders, yeah.
What color is her hair?
Really dark, close to black.
And y'all was in 5 Points, you said? Last seen in 5 Points?
Yes.
Okay, and what is your name? Alright, we got it. So we're going to send the officer out there so y'all can make that report, okay?
Okay, thank you so much for the help.
You're welcome, no problem.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.
So the police arrived at the hub shortly after the call, and they began questioning the roommates as they spoke about the timeline of their night and gave all the details of where they had gone. They told them about the Uber and Sammy's last known location as well. So while police were there, Greg arrived at the hub, and he also spoke with them about his communication with Sammy the previous evening and into the early morning hours. After the police left, Sammy's roommates were able to get into her computer, and they started searching through her emails. That is when they noticed that the Uber had sent her a ride cancellation receipt the previous evening. This receipt was exactly around the time that Sammy called Greg and told him that she was getting an Uber, and this Uber driver had a charcoal gray 2011 Dodge Charger. So as the concern increased, Greg and Sammy's friends went out and continued to search for her. They went back to Montgomery Avenue, and there was still no sign of Sammy. They looked in the grass for her phone and really just for any sign that would indicate that she ever was on Montgomery Avenue that night. But instead, they found nothing. They drove to 5 Points, and they went to a bar called Breakers. They hadn't gone to Breakers the previous night, but the bar sat on the corner of the street, and it had a lot of cameras, and had a really good view of the main area of 5 Points. So they were hoping that the cameras would have provided information on where Sammy went that night. But they got nothing. So then they walked to Bird Dog, and they asked to see the security footage from the previous evening. In the footage, the street just outside of Bird Dog could be seen. There were a lot of people outside walking and chatting on the sidewalk in this footage. But in the corner of the camera view, there was Sammy in her bright orange top, getting into a black Chevy Impala around 2:09 a.m. Now, clearly, that was a very different car than the Dodge Charger that she was supposed to be getting in that ultimately sent that cancellation request. Her friends had never seen this car before, but they were determined to find it, and they started scouring the area for black Chevy Impalas. And then they went back to Montgomery Avenue, and they started knocking on doors, asking if anybody in the area had seen Sammy. Really kind of conducting their own investigation, while the police were, of course, conducting theirs. They bounced back and forth between these areas all day, frantically searching for their friend Sammy. Now, as I said, meanwhile, the police had began their own search for Sammy. But they were really having a hard time finding any sort of leads because Sammy's phone was completely turned off at that point, and the police had no way of tracking her. The police went back to the 5 Points area and asked to see more security footage from different businesses in the area. They just wanted to catch something that would give them a better idea of where Sammy went that night or who was actually driving the vehicle that she got into. The additional security camera footage that they obtained showed Sammy waiting outside and talking to Greg on the phone, then waiting by the curb and stepping into a silver car that she thought was her Uber before that car ended up driving away. She hung up the phone and then went back to that curb to wait. The footage also showed a black Chevy Impala lurking around in the area, driving up and down the parking lot before doing a U-turn and heading straight for Sammy as she stepped near the curb to wait for her Uber. The driver of the Impala pulled into the handicap spot next to Sammy, and she quickly opened the back door. She got in the car, and the car drove off, going the opposite direction of her apartment. And then finally, it was picked up on camera one last time around 1.5 miles away. So the police put out a BOLO, which stands for Be on the Lookout. They put this BOLO out for any Chevy Impala. This let law enforcement in the area know that they were to pull over any cars that matched this vehicle's description. So 14 hours after Sammy had gone missing, the police received a call that a shocking discovery had been made an 1.5 hours east of Columbia. A man named Ander Lee was out turkey hunting with his friend Edward near Turbyville, South Carolina. Ander was a young man in his 20s and a local to Turbyville. He was very familiar with the area and went hunting there often. So that morning, Ander and his friend Edward began their hunt in Turbyville, but they didn't have any luck. So in the afternoon, they moved a little further south to an area called New Zion, which is about 78 miles east of Columbia. As they were walking along the road, Ander noticed something in the bushes. Now, at first, he wasn't sure what it was, but the more he looked, the more he started to suspect that it was a human body that was covered in blood. So he called the police around 4:20 p.m., and they arrived in the area around 6 p.m. Now, I gotta just say, I don't know the distance from the local police station, but an hour and a half after reporting a human body covered in blood, maybe there should be a little bit higher sense of urgency there. But again, I don't know the logistics of that area. So when the police arrived, investigators began inspecting the area. During their initial search of the surrounding area, investigators found an envelope, cigarette butts, and beer cans, and they were scattered all over the ground. The body found was that of a young woman, and it had numerous stab wounds all over her body, and it was also covered in blood just as reported. The blood was mixed with mud, and it was smeared everywhere. This suggested to investigators that the body might have been dumped and dragged in that area, but the lack of any significant blood trail or evidence made it seem like the crime had actually happened elsewhere. An earring was missing from this victim's left ear, and investigators used a metal detector to try to locate the missing earring in the area, but they found nothing. Investigators also noted that the victim's fingernails were gone, but they were unsure if they broke off or if they were intentionally cut off. The girl was also wearing platform sandals that were broken, but were still attached to her ankle. Using an alternative light source, which is a light that helps illuminate various forms of evidence, they were able to see bruises all along the victim's body. The investigators were made aware of the missing college student in Columbia, and the body was quickly identified as that of Sammy Josephson. Her body was taken away from the crime scene for further investigation, and the details that were to come was going to horrify everyone who was on the investigation, and of course, Sammy's close friends, family, and boyfriend Greg. Law enforcement officials continued to stay in contact with Sammy's parents during this time, as her parents still made that 12-hour drive from New Jersey to South Carolina, and they asked her parents if they had access to her bank information. They did, so they checked her bank account and they noticed that her card had been used at 2 different ATMs in the area. The first attempt to withdraw money occurred at 5:45 a.m. at an ATM in Sumter, South Carolina, about an hour drive east of 5 Points. Now, it's important to note that Sumter is halfway between 5 Points and that area where Sammy's body was found. The second attempt on her bank card was about an hour later at 6:47 a.m. This time, the attempted transaction occurred in the Hampton Hills area of Columbia. Both transactions were denied, and no money was withdrawn from Samantha's bank account. So police contacted Wells Fargo, which was Sammy's bank, and they were put into contact with a financial crimes investigator. This investigator was able to pull footage from both ATMs, and the footage showed what appeared to be a man walking up to the ATM and attempting to withdraw money. The man was wearing all black with a hoodie, a black jacket, and gloves. The hood was pulled tightly over his head, and he appeared to have a mask covering his face. Later in the evening, Sammy's parents finally arrived in Columbia, and they went to the police station immediately. It was there that the police notified them, her boyfriend, and her friends of what they had found. Hours after the body was identified, at 3 a.m. on March 30th, 2019, police officers Jeffrey Kraft and Justin Nesia were patrolling the 5 Points area. They noticed a black Chevy Impala driving around the area, and due to that bolo that was issued earlier in the day, they decided to conduct a traffic stop. The driver of the Impala was a younger man, and he was wearing a light-colored sweatshirt with the hood pulled up and a bandana around his head. A female was sitting in the passenger seat. Now, the man was initially cooperative with the officers. The officers asked for identification, and when the man said he didn't have any, they asked him to get out of the car because they said that they could smell marijuana. The man said that he had smoked earlier in the day, but he agreed to step out of the car. But as soon as he stepped out, he immediately started running away from the police. Just a full-on sprint down the road. So officers started chasing after him, and the suspect was eventually caught a few blocks away.
What's going on, sir? You got your license? You got your license on you? I'm also Columbia Police Department K9. No license on you. Why not? All right, man. Who's smoking the marijuana?
I had smoked some earlier, sir, when I was at home.
All right, man. You're going to have to step on out, man. All right, here's the deal, man. I pulled your car over because it matches the suspect. Get your hand in your pocket. What are you, crazy? Get over here. Hey, get over here. Go on, run. Hey, I'm going to release the dog. I can't. I was just going to see if he'll stop.
Officers now had probable cause to search the vehicle, and they found a rose gold iPhone and a pink keychain. When the officer opened the trunk, they saw blood, and they called for backup immediately. When the forensic analysts arrived, they found large spots of blood everywhere throughout the vehicle, footprints on the back windows, and the car reeked of bleach. In the back seat, they found cleaning supplies like disinfectant sprays and wipes, as well as a thoroughly saturated blood stain on the back seat. Also in the back of the vehicle was a blood-stained black jacket, a McDonald's visor, and various other items. The investigators noted that the child locks were engaged, meaning that anyone in the back seat could not open the doors or the windows. So it didn't take long for them to realize that this person was 100% the person they were looking for. But again, the details were going to get even more haunting. The suspect was quickly taken into custody and was identified as 24-year-old Nathaniel Rowland. Nathaniel was a resident of New Zion, and coincidentally, the area where Sammy's body was found was only 2 miles away from Nathaniel's family's home. He had one past felony charge for obtaining goods under false pretenses. In October of 2018, Nathaniel and another man had attacked a woman in her car and then forced her to drive to an ATM. They took the money that she had withdrew from her bank account and then used it to purchase various items like a PS4. Nathaniel then sold the items at a pawn shop, which led to him getting arrested. So after being placed under arrest, Nathaniel was brought to the police station to be questioned along with the woman in his car, who was his girlfriend, Maria Howard. Nathaniel was not cooperative during the interview. He tried to lay his head down, he tried to sleep, and didn't say much except denying his involvement in any sort of crime. A physical examination was done on Nathaniel, and Sammy's DNA was found underneath his fingernails. His cell phone records indicated he was in the 5 Points area around the same time that Sammy went missing, and then moved on to the area where her body was later found. The police also obtained surveillance camera footage from a local cell phone repair store where he was seen trying to sell that rose gold iPhone that was found in his car. In the video, he was wearing an outfit that is identical to the man in the ATM footage. The owner of the store positively identified him as the man who was trying to sell the phone. Yet despite the mounting evidence against him, he continued to stay quiet and denied his involvement. His girlfriend Maria, on the other hand, had a lot more to say. She said that on the night that Sammy was taken, Nathaniel was at her house until she fell asleep around 1:30 a.m. Maria had woken up a couple of hours later and said that he was no longer there. She tried calling him a few times, but apparently he didn't answer. She had work at 7 a.m. and he was apparently supposed to take her to work, but he still wasn't home. And when he did arrive home at 8 a.m., he was still wearing the same clothing that he was the night before. Maria asked him where her hat and her shirt was for work. He gave her shirt, but it was wet, which was weird. When she asked where her hat was, Nathaniel claimed that her hat was in the country with blood on it. After asking him what that meant, Nathaniel told her to mind her own business before bringing her to work and stopping to get gas on the way. While waiting in the car, Maria noticed many things like bloodstains, a sheet covering the back seat, and that random rose gold phone on the floor. When Maria asked Nathaniel what was going on, again he told her, mind your business. Later that same day, Maria also witnessed Nathaniel cleaning the car and cleaning a knife. He was still wearing the same clothes as the day before, and Maria had a mounting suspicion that something wasn't right, but apparently was too scared to call the police. Now, I understand where a lot of people may think that she's at fault for that. I too, to a degree, think she should have called the police. But in that moment, if you see blood, you see him cleaning a knife, you're fearing the worst of what this human is capable of. I understand the fear of trying to break away and call the police and wanting to wait until you are safely in a place to be able to do so, fearful that this person may attack you and kill you as well. So the police obtained a warrant to search Maria's home. In the trash can behind Maria's house, many concerning items were found, like blood-stained clothing, cleaning supplies, paper towels, gloves, and a multi-purpose tool, or otherwise known as a pocket knife, that was covered in blood. The gloves had both Sammy and Nathaniel's DNA on it. The blood found on the clothing items, as well as the blood found on that knife, was a close match to Sammy's DNA. Now, this multi-purpose tool knife was unique, and it had a double-bladed knife that was consistent with the stab wounds that were found on Sammy's body. Nathaniel's DNA was found on the knife, as well as another unknown male's DNA. The unknown DNA has never been identified. Sammy's DNA was never found on Nathaniel himself, and he didn't have any cuts or scratches on his body, but the blood in the back seat and in the trunk of his car matched Sammy's, and her fingerprints were on a variety of items that were in his possession. And that footprint that was found on that back seat window, well, investigators were able to compare the ridge lines of the print to Sammy's actual foot, and it was a match. She had been trying to kick her way out of the window to escape this monster. The rose gold iPhone that was found on the floor of Nathaniel's car was also registered to Samantha. No surprise. It was synced with a MacBook that had the username Samantha's MacBook Pro 421, user Samantha Josephson. The envelope that had been found near that crime scene also had Nathaniel's fingerprints on it. So with all of this evidence, it was easy for investigators to link Nathaniel to this crime, to this horrific murder. Nathaniel was charged with kidnapping, with murder, and with possession of a weapon during a crime. He was denied bond on June 9th, 2020, pled not guilty, and then went on trial on July 20th, 2021. During the trial, he was completely emotionless. Prosecutors argued that the night of her death, Sammy was tired and had a very long day ahead of her. So after ordering an Uber, she innocently got into the car that pulled up on the curb next to her without double-checking to make sure that this was actually her Uber. Nathaniel, who was seemingly prowling the area and purposefully looking for trouble, took advantage of the situation and used the car's child locks to then prevent her from escaping. They thought it initially started out as a robbery, and then it escalated for unknown reasons. Clearly, with her blood and her footprints all over the car, Sammy had fought for her life, while he viciously and heinously stabbed her over and over again. After dumping her body miles away from town, stealing her life wasn't enough, because then he went and tried to steal her money. And then, as if that wasn't enough, he was found creeping around the 5 Points area again the very next day, almost like he wanted to do it all over again. Greg and Sammy's roommates also testified with their version of events from that night. The real Uber driver testified and said that he had canceled the ride after calling her and driving around looking for her with no luck. And the most shocking testimony came from the forensic pathologist who performed Sammy's autopsy. The pathologist said that there were around 120 stab wounds all over her body, but that there were so many that he did not have an exact count. Most of the stab wounds were to her arms, chest, back, and head, although she did have them all over. But he testified that some of these stab wounds were so deep that they even penetrated her brain, and that her torn fingernails were likely defensive wounds as she was trying to protect herself from Nathaniel. It just reminds me so much, too, of the Tristan Bailey case, who was stabbed over 100 times by her classmate, and she was 13 years old at the time, and she had defensive wounds all over her body. It is horrific to think about. The pathologist also said that when they performed the autopsy, there was only a tablespoon of blood left in her body. Now, this is crazy because humans generally have a gallon of blood in their system at any given time. But there was so little blood left in her system that they had difficulty obtaining a blood sample from her, meaning that there were so many wounds that she literally bled out, drained out. It is horrific. While prosecutors had a very great case, Nathaniel's defense attorneys argued that his DNA was not found on Sammy, and that another man's DNA was found on that multi-purpose knife tool, which suggested that this random DNA belonged to the true perpetrator. They even asked the judge to throw the charges out, saying that the prosecution only had circumstantial evidence. But the judge denied that request, basically saying that there was a mountain of direct and circumstantial evidence that the jury needed to weigh. His defense then called 0 witnesses and rested pretty quickly after giving their less than impressive argument. To no one's surprise, their argument did not sway the jury. So on July 21st, 2021, the jury only took an hour to deliberate, and they found Nathaniel guilty of all charges. Before sentencing, Sammy's mother gave a very moving and impactful statement.
Words cannot express the anguish our family and friends have endured since he kidnapped and brutally murdered Samantha. From the day I found out I was having Sammy, I was in love with her. As a mother, you worry and pray that your child will be safe, happy, and healthy. When she was sad, I was sad. When she was happy, so was I. Her dreams were my dream, and her death was my death. I close my eyes, and I feel what she endured at his hands 120 times. Over and over and over, fighting for her life, locked in his car. I used to have dreams for her. Now all I have are nightmares. 120 times. The final moments, her bare feet kicking and fighting for her life. I visualize the blood flowing from her body, her beautiful body, 120 times for what? The $35 a college student has in her bank account? The loss of Sammy is beyond words. There'll be no more birthday parties, backyard gatherings, holiday celebrations, or activities to share with her. I was planning my trip to Columbia in 2019 to watch my daughter graduate from college. Instead, I went to Columbia to gather her belongings. I cannot watch my daughter graduate from law school, get married, or have children, all of which were her dreams. Her laughter, hugs, guidance, advice, and opportunities to tell her I love her are gone. Our family of 4 is forever broken. All I have are memories of the past and thoughts about what her final moments on earth must have been like. He erased my future with Sammy, but he cannot touch my memories. The excruciating pain he put her through is unimaginable. I pray that when Sammy closed her eyes, she thought of beautiful things. His evil face was not the last thing she saw before she took her last breath. I pray that her grandparents and uncle wrapped her in her loving arms. In 1 second, our lives changed. I miss her. Everything she touched was better because she made it so. The lessons she taught me as a mom are carried through me forever. She brightened up the day with her smile. The pain and loss are beyond words. He changed me forever. The heinous and brutal crime could have happened to anyone. Sammy was a reflection of everyone's child. Sammy had a bright future. She worked hard to accomplish her goals. She was kind and compassionate and would never hurt anyone. She did not prey upon others. I walked hand in hand with her throughout her 21 years. Her death sliced through my heart. Now I see sadness in ordinary days. I miss her heartfelt laugh. I am breathless and I want my Sammy. Such a heinous, vicious crime. Why? I spent the last 2 years asking myself that question. He cut out a piece of me. I'm bleeding silently. You don't see it. I try to move forward each day, but forever will be broken. One cannot explain the grief my family feels. There was no warning, no time to say goodbye, no time to tell Sammy all the things I would have wanted to say. No time to kiss or cuddle up. We were thrown into this world of terror. My world is now incomplete. Nothing but memories can fill the emptiness of Sammy's passing. I miss her precious voice, her giggles and humor. I long to know that she closed her eyes and visualized her family in peace and not his face. I will never comprehend why he did what he did. I try not to dwell on how she died. Rather, I want to remember how she lived, but I'm not there yet. I had the gift of being Samantha's mother for 21 years. I despised everything about him. His eyes glaring at my family during the trial told me everything I already knew about him. He is pure evil. Samantha fought for her life because her life was worth fighting for. I wish I could gather the broken pieces of my heart. I am breathless. I want my Sammy. The ache that spreads throughout my body hurts more each day. I cannot fully express how it feels to lose a daughter. The ache, the longing, endlessly tearing me up inside. He's a monster, he's evil and pathetic. The excruciating pain he put my daughter through is unimaginable. I am shattered, angry, and heartbroken. His ruthless, violent act took a bright light out of my universe and changed many lives forever. He stole my beliefs. However, I pray every day. I pray that he feels Samantha's pain. I pray that he get what he deserves under the law. I pray that he never has a chance to hurt anyone ever again. Everyone has choices. He may not like them now, but it was his choice to kidnap and murder Sammy, and he will have to face the consequence of his choices. I ask your honor to impose the strictest sentence upon him so that he may never walk the streets as a free man again for the rest of his life.
Nathaniel received life in prison without the possibility of parole, and the judge described him as heartless and claimed that this was the most heinous murder case he had ever heard in court. Family and friends have never forgotten Sammy's fun and warm personality, and they continue to share her story and make her spirit live on. Throughout this terrible experience, Sammy's family has done a lot of impactful work to make sure that this never happens to anyone else. They continued to spread Sammy's story and even started the What's My Name Foundation. The center of the foundation is the acronym SAMI, or SAMI, which stands for Stop, Ask, Match, Inform. Basically, if you order a ride from a rideshare service, ask the driver, "What's my name?" before getting into the car. If the driver is who they say they are, they will be able to tell you your name based on the information from the app. Sammy's family also worked with lawmakers to advocate for policies that improve rider safety while using rideshare apps. South Carolina passed the Samantha Josephson Ridesharing Safety Act on June 5, 2019. This law states that rideshare drivers must display their license plate number on the front of the car. The law also established fines and jail time for people who pretend to be rideshare drivers. New York, North Carolina, and New Jersey followed suit and passed similar laws that require rideshare drivers to display various signs on their cars. On June 13, 2019, Sammy's family worked with New Jersey Representative Christopher Smith to introduce a law to the United States Congress called Samantha's Law. This law would require rideshare drivers to have front license plates, illuminated signs, and a scannable QR code. The law also criminalized misrepresenting as a rideshare driver. The House of Representatives unanimously approved the bill in July of 2020, and President Biden signed the bill into law on January 5, 2023. This terrifying scenario brings to light very important questions about the safety of ride-sharing services and who we can trust. It reminds us that we must stay aware and vigilant in order to protect ourselves. If you use an Uber or a Lyft, make sure that the car and the license plate match the description in the app. Make sure that the driver knows your name, because what happened in Sammy's case could happen to anyone, and it is anyone's nightmare, and I am just so happy that justice was served and that the evil man who thought that he had the right to take her life will spend the rest of his life in prison. Now, going to the question, too, of what more could these rideshare apps do to avoid things like this from happening, part of me wonders, well, it's a habit for me anytime I order an Uber to match the license plate, as I'm sure it is many of you. I wonder if there's something that they could put into motion to where the ride cannot technically begin until the Uber driver confirms on their end that this is the right person and that the rider confirms that it is the right person. Or that maybe there's an alarm that goes off if the rider does not confirm that. Because I know that the driver has to initiate the ride. But as a passenger, I've never had to say, yes, this is my correct Uber driver, begin ride, or something to that effect. Which, what if that were part of the software, and if there were, say, a 30-second delay, where if you don't do that at the time of, the ride being assigned or whatever it is, that an alarm goes off, or because a lot of the times it's not people posing as Uber drivers, it's actual Uber drivers committing these crimes. So I don't know, and maybe that's a dumb suggestion, I don't know, but I feel like there should be something in place in that software that makes another checkpoint happen before the ride happens. Just another benchmark of safety. I don't know. There's smart enough people out there with Zuckerberg, with Elon, with whoever. Like, I'm not the one to ask, but there's got to be something in place to make this more safe, right? I don't know. Tell me if you have better suggestions in the comment section. This case is awful and horrific because, again, you're drinking, you think you're doing the right thing by calling an Uber, you mistakenly get in another one because you're trusting, and then look what happens. It's awful. I really appreciate you guys hearing Samantha's story and tuning in today. Please leave your supportive comments for her family below. If you have tips of what you do with your Uber drivers to make sure that you're safe, please leave those suggestions in the comment section below. And just leave your supportive comments for Samantha, because her life was just taken far too soon, and by such a cruel, heartless, and calculated evil monster, a sociopath, I would say. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you appreciate the case coverage, please don't forget to give this video a like on the way out. If you want to hear more of these videos, subscribe, as I mentioned before in the beginning of this video. And I apologize, I can already feel my jaw getting a little wonky, so I apologize if it was kind of had a mind of its own during that video. Anyways, thanks guys so much, and until the next one, stay safe. Bye.